There are two reasons to dampen when you're playing timpani. The first is to have clarity within your ensemble or clarity when you're in unison with another instrument. And the other is to have clarity within the drums or within the chords that you're playing. Timpani are traditionally considered an extension of the brass section, and especially in earlier classical music, they are often written in direct unison with the trumpets. They add a certain clarity to the articulation at the beginning of a lot of traditional orchestra sounds, but they also need to have clarity at the end of the sound and not allow their tone to continue ringing after everyone else is cut off. The basic dampening technique is to continue holding the stick in your thumb and first finger and use these back fingers to dampen the head, either directly in the playing area or just to the side. So for example, or just to the side. You may be able to hear a subtle difference on the recording. You'll definitely be able to hear a difference between those two things when you're sitting over the drums and doing it yourself. Because the heads are vibrating up and down, the fingers can sometimes create a buzzing sound on the head, especially when the heads are loose and they're moving a lot. There's no secret to avoiding this. Because the heads are moving, this just kind of happens. But there are a couple of things that you can do to sort of minimize it. The first is to dampen directly where you played, because that's the most instantaneous cutoff. The second, if that's really buzzy for some reason, is to try to mute to the side anywhere it doesn't buzz. So if it's buzzing too much, over there maybe. You can also dampen with more or less pressure, usually more, and really grip the head with your fingers. And it's very much like a Spider-Man fingers, where your pads of your fingers are going to flex backwards. And the last thing we would do is what we call progressive dampening, where we're going to put one finger down after the other quickly to try to pull that sound out a little bit at a time, try to reduce the vibration on the head. Generally, you want to avoid pulling your fingers across the head while you dampen, like this, because it creates a kind of brushing sound in the texture of the head. Not every head has a texture, but almost all of the best timpani heads do, so you do not want to be in the habit of pulling across the surface like that. Besides controlling the ends of the notes within the ensemble, the other time you want to dampen is when you're changing chords and you do not want chord tones from the previous chord hanging through into the new one. Timpani play between 5 and 1 chords a lot, and so technically, because the 5 is part of the 1 chord, you could leave it ringing and just let it go because it's all part of the chord. However, that does tend to take away from the tonicness of the 1 chord. And so if you dampen this one as you strike this one, it clarifies what your ear is supposed to be listening to. One more time, back to back. However, if you're going the other direction, leaving 1 ringing on a 5 chord is not okay, because that is the 4th scale degree of this chord, and it does not sound good. As opposed to, one more time. In any situation, dampening the next to last note in a passage is almost always a good idea. Generally speaking, if you played several different pitches coming up to a final note, most of those will have decayed far enough that you're not going to hear them. But whatever the last thing is, you want to dampen that to give the final note clarity in the chord. Now, of course, you can always get a score out and you can confirm what exactly are the right notes or the best notes that you can let ring. That's a lot of work, and I wouldn't expect the average middle school or high school student to go digging into a score to figure it out. So when you're teaching it, these are your best guidelines, but especially this last one. Whatever the last note is, you're going to dampen whatever comes right before it so that you have clarity on that downbeat.